What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Today we're just going to do some kind of random Q&A today. No real topics. If you guys got any questions, shoot. Otherwise, I got a bunch of random ones I've been asked over the last week or two. Forchers, Fish, Gary, Combo, Ghouls, Mike Johnson, Melanie, Sid. What is going on, guys? Shelly, happy Wednesday, everybody. Hopefully everyone's having a wonderful day. Seen those cool slide lock screws for reactors? I have not. I'll check those out later. What's going on, Rob? How's it going, Shelly? Although, another cool stuff, if anyone saw my Instagram story, I got a nice box of art reef rocks, which I'm excited for, because they built me a cool custom scape, so I'm super excited to check it out. I haven't even opened it yet, because I'm working all day, but you're trying to tomorrow, get the baby unboxed and probably do a video, but I'm super excited to see what's in there. What's going on, Paul? Long time no see. Hopefully everyone's tank is doing wonderful. My big tank is pH is in that nice happy zone now, so pretty stoked about that. Between the soda lime pellets and the Calc, I'm back up to that 8.3 something, which is a good place to be. Jared, what brand of trace elements do you dose and how often? Okay, so two different things there. My first one is I have the Brightwell kind of broad spectrum trace elements on dosers, and those are dosed to my tank every single day. Then on top of that, I take I do an ICP test every once in a while, and I have the Reef Moonshiners, and I use that to fine tweak over top of that. So Brightwell is kind of like the core trace elements, and then the Reef Moonshiners I use for my kind of tweaking to fine tune individual elements on top of that. So that's good. Mom's doing fabulous, just got to clean the glass. Luxury service there, Tracy. Yep. So yeah, so trace elements for the most part daily. When I'm motivated, I'll fine tune the other ones daily. I've been slacking lately. It's been on my to-do list to send in an ICP test for like a month now. So this week, maybe tomorrow, I'll actually go get it done. Paul, return to the hobby. 40 gallon now. No longer with the BioCube, moved to Baltimore, Pittsburgh last 3 years. This time is much better. Excellent. That's good to hear. Gary, think about making my 50 gallon into a full SPS tank filled with Acros. Heck yeah. Should I cycle the tank for a while before everything is placed aside? Okay, if you are just putting Acros into the tank, they can go on a brand new tank. Not even an issue. I have had Acros living in a 5 gallon bucket, but they do need stability. So the only thing with a new tank is you might not have a lot of stability. If it's an existing tank, I mean, you could probably throw them in now and they're probably fine, right? But as long as parameters are stable, they'll be happy. Adrian, 90 gallon tank running 16 months, want to upgrade to a 180 using new rock along with the old rocks. Can this be done in one day? It definitely can be done in a day. I have done something similar in the past. When you do it, so all your bacteria is going to mainly be on your surfaces. So it's going to be on your rock and it's going to be on your sand. And when you're moving your old rock over, you're bringing a lot of the bacteria with you. Now, I wouldn't reuse the sand generally because it's full of lots of nasties. I tend to use new sand or clean the sand really well. And if you clean it really well, you're going to kill the bacteria. So that's kind of food for thought on that one. So I tend to use new sand. So you will still have a mini cycle in your new tank when you upgrade it. So when doing that, I would just dump in copious amounts of bottle bacteria. Like when I did mine, one time I used the Fritz Turbo Start. The last couple times I've done it, I used the Brightwell Quicksort XLM or Microbacter 7, and just use that to kind of help fill in the gaps of the new rock to help avoid that mini cycle. Mike, Devin, when you start dosing Calc, do you recommend going based off reef chemistry calculator or just based off evaporation? I do mine off evaporation. Now you also got to take a little bit into account what your alkalinity is as well. So what I've done on mine, so I started dosing Calc only at night. My ATO has been turned off for weeks, so my ATO hasn't been turned on in ages. And I worked out roughly what my evaporation rate was. So just make a little mark or something in your sump and let it run. And after a couple days, check it. If it's getting a little higher, tone your dose down. If it's too low, you can add a little bit more. And this will change throughout the year, but you can probably get it fairly stable. And that's kind of how I based off mine. So yeah, my ATO never gets used. Is pretty much almost exclusively Calc replacing my ATO at nighttime now. That's been pretty awesome for up in the pH. Food adds phosphates to my tank. Yes, it does. Can I run carbon on a newly cycled tank? You sure could. Yeah, I mean, you can run carbon anytime. It's going to remove any odors or any yellowings or tannins in the water. You might not have anything to pull out if your tank's freshly cycled, so it might be pointless. But if you get any like funky smells, you throw in some carbon, it will definitely get rid of it. Paul, just got my cleanup crew. First the softies in my new tank, then I'm going to run auto aqua AIO. I think that's the little auto top off all in one. Chato growing back under the Aquamax. Perfect. Smaller tanks, smaller frags. Start dosing Calc. Recommended doing lime water. Or have you done slurry? I've done slurry and I have done normal, and I'm kind of doing something that's kind of in the middle. Now, my thoughts, if you do water changes once in a while, I think there's some good benefits to the slurry. I think if you never do water changes, eventually the slurry might bite you because of the impurity buildups. So that's kind of my thoughts. One of the questions somebody asked me recently was about, I mentioned in one of my videos, I added a bunch of zip ties to my Calc stir. So on the Vast K2, I took a bunch of zap straps and randomly put them all over the shaft and just cut them so they didn't hit the little tube on the side. And it's not quite slurry, but it's a lot more milkier than clear now. So it's like 30% slurry, right? It's not putting the actual powder in the tank, but it's not putting the clear in. So I've done that, and it's been up the potency a little bit doing it that way. How do you achieve a stable tank? What's considered a stable tank? So, okay, Adrian, two different things. One is going to be bacteria stability. So the older a tank gets, the more stable it's going to get. Like my water box, like it's a good 2 years old now. I do hardly anything to it now. It's great. It's overall things stay pretty happy as long as I keep elk and the other stuff stable. Like it's pretty happy. This tank, like right now, still has bits of cyano. It's still going through some of the uglies. It's still a new tank. It's only been out for a few months, and I'm going to be changing some of the part of the rock out for the art reef stuff to my little custom one they made for me. So it's going to just mess with it a bit more, but I know it's going to be probably 5 or 6 months until it sits in its like happy zone. Now for if you're looking sticks and acros and that type of stuff, a lot, like part of it is the bacteria, part of it is stability in like your alkalinity, your salinity, your pH, is like keeping all your core stuff stable, and a lot of that will go a long ways for corals and other stuff being happy. Jay, can I run UV on a newly cycled tank? I have Tangs and paranoid about ick. You sure can. UV won't necessarily 100% prevent it or get rid of it, but it can help prevent it from exploding. Make sure your tank's fully cycled. If you're dumping in bottle bacteria, I'd make sure your UV is turned off, but if your tank's fully cycled and just running as normal, you could absolutely turn UV on. Shouldn't hurt anything. Alright, John, I'd like to start implementing Calc. At the moment, I'm dosing 2-part, but I'm dosing around 140 mils a day. I would like to dose Calc and supplement 2-part if needed, 200 gal SPS dominator. Okay, so you're likely going to have to still dose 2-part on top of it if you're doing 200 mils a day, but you can probably cut that in half. Like it kind of depends how much you evaporate, but on mine, I basically cut my calcium reactor in half. So I had my calcium reactor effluent doing about 50 mils a day through the Versa. Now it's doing around 22, 25, something like that. So basically cut it in half because that other half is being taken up by the Calc. So I think you're still gonna have to dose 2-part, but I think you could definitely supplement a good chunk of it with Calc. And if you're just overall want to reduce your 2-part, you could dose it 24 hours and just always be dosing it. Or if you want to go for more of the pH boost, like what I'm doing is I'm dosing it at nighttime. That way it's kind of killing my nighttime dip, what I normally get. What's going on, farm frags? Best way to transition to Calc. So you're gonna have to test your elk, but ideally just start dosing it and keep an eye on your elk. I would use a continuous duty pump and just turn it low of the drip rate through it, and you can just slowly up it and slowly lower your 2-part dosing at the same time. You just got to find the little balance. So a little bit of keeping an eye on what your parameters are. For the most part, I mean, you can probably lower elk and calcium the same amount as you up your Calc, because your Calc's going to be kind of dosing both. Shout out to Yellow Watchman Gobi. What's going on? How much Chato do you use, and can you have too much? I don't really think you can have too much Chato. Like as much as you want in there, bigger the sump the better. in my opinion. I mean, obviously, if you have zero nutrients, you might want to light your Chato less, right? Or pull some out. So I don't think you can have too much, but how much energy to grow depends on how much par in that duration. So you kind of just got to tweak it based on where your nutrients are at. Travis, so the Avast is the best reactor in your opinion. I do like my Avast. I do think it works very well. Aquamax is also good for half the price. I haven't used Aquamax personally. So it depends what you want to do. If you want to do the tried and true calc dosing, Avast is very good. If you want to try more of the slurry method, I mean the ice cap one, you can get more complete milky through it. The only problem I had with mine over time was if you're trying to do slurry with the ice cap, eventually all that powder in the stir starts to like sand down the bottom. So I got a little circular piece of glass that I put in the bottom, and that prevented it from wearing down, right? Because the glass isn't going to wear where the acrylic will over time. That's the only one caveat. What's a good way to raise nitrates without raising phosphates? So you can dose nitrates directly. I know Brightwell makes a product, Nrso, that you can dose directly and is basically just dosing nitrates to the tank. I've never personally had that problem because I'm always trying to get my stuff down. Although in my water box, my nitrates is pretty darn low right now. But I would pick up some of the Nrso and just dose that directly to your tank. Vast Marine is good. Aquamax. What are your thoughts on external algae reactor like the Tunes one? Could not find any review from you. I have not used a commercial Chato reactor. I built a DIY one back in the day using an old, what brand was it? No longer in business. Vertex. An old Vertex reactor, and wrapped my own lights around it, made my own Chato reactor, and that worked pretty dang well actually. Slight bit of a pain to clean, but I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of cool taking out when you have this giant log of Chato, so that was kind of cool. For other external algae reactors, also use the clear water scrubber, and that also worked very well. Tend to be 10 to 14 days-ish to have to give it a clean out. Aside from that, worked very well, kept everything in check. Now, I also get asked all the time, you know, Chato versus algae turf scrubber. They both can work well. I think a turf scrubber can do it in a smaller package, so you get more output for its size and nutrient export, but it's a little more maintenance because you got to clean a little more often, where Chato can ignore it from a long time. Now, the other flip side is with the algae one, another benefit of it, or a turf scrubber, is that it's contained, right? So it keeps your sun cleaner. So there's the pros and cons. They both work. They each have their own little ups and downs and perks, everything. Diantica's Reef. Any other hobbies outside of the aquarium hobby? Oh, I have many hobbies. Snowboarding for sure. Only about a few more weeks left of that, so got to get that in before it's over. So definitely do snowboard. One wheel is my other fun one, so it's like summer snowboarding. So it's like electric skateboard with a big go-kart tire. Love it. Tons of fun. And my other random one lately is I started just on the other side of me a vivarium. So I might do poison dart frogs, I'm thinking, or some cool small geckos, but I got a really cool vivarium. I might do a future video on it on the channel and just see what kind of the interest is there, but that one's a lot of fun. And if you are interested in that, I started a new Instagram called ReefDudes. Very on brand. Rooms Reef. Can you also buy a glass magnetic stir? Oh, very cool. There you go. I know they usually use those little Teflon pills, right? So it's whatever your container is. If your container's glass, you're set. Murphy's Reef. I just set up a new tank because my silicone seam is starting to get low. If it's a brand new tank, if you're moving your stuff into it, Murphy, like if you're moving your rock and all your established stuff into it, you can probably do it pretty darn quick. Especially if your seam's going. Great excuse to buy a new tank, but sucks to have to do it. Scott McMillan, hello from Scotland. Welcome from Canada. How's it going, Scott? Love my Chato Max Light. I noticed the last 2 weeks the algae grew 3 times the original size. Awesome. Okay. Note on that one, when most people get like a sweet algae reactor or like a sweet refugium light, things tend to grow like crazy for like a couple months. Then there'll be a point where your growth will be stunted and you're probably running low on iron or molybdenum or one of those ones. So it is good to dose a supplement for that, because eventually your Chato will get stunted. Everything will be amazing for a few months. So just something to note. If you're not dosing one, I dose the Chato Grow on my water box daily just because it keeps the refugium growing. So if it eventually stunts, you know what you gotta do. Anyone still dose vodka? I have not dosed vodka in a long time. Use the tunes reactor, spins at the start, but after about a week it stops spinning. Yeah, I'd imagine once it gets full of algae, it would probably definitely slow it down. Ghouls, do you think you'll ever put your streams into a podcast? I have been asked hundreds of times, and yes, I will. One of these days I'll rip all the audio from it and just throw it up in an audio version. Now, on that note, I also do have the Seriously Salty Science podcast I'm doing with O and Brandy, which that one's definitely going to be turned into it. We just got to get around to actually editing it and publishing it. That will come. So it's definitely on the to-do list. We have recorded. We've done a couple live episodes, as well as also have a couple ones that we pre-recorded. So just a matter of actually editing it, and the free time to edit is always the hard part. Would you put Refugium or Chato in a Refugium day one, or would you wait until the tank is initially cycled? I would cycle the tank first. The main reason, because Chato or Heraldry, I know for sure an algae turf scrubber will take ammonia out of the water. And ammonia is what you're using to feed your cycle. So that could technically stunt it down if you had a turf scrubber on right away. So Chato, I don't know 100%, but it probably does a somewhat extent to that. So I would just let your tank fully cycle. You don't really have any nitrates or phosphates for the algae yet anyways. So once it has some of that, then you can add it after that. So that's personally what I would do. I have the KS20 Calcster. My stand has a 10 gallon ATO. Use ATO. Can I put the Calcster in the ATO tank filled with fresh water? Your Calcster could absolutely sit in that tank. Now, if you're talking about the Avast one, I'm assuming, it totally can. You can submerge it in water. The motor's on the top, so you'll be perfectly fine. Some people put it in their sump. Some can put it in your ATO. Just make sure you're dripping it into the actual tank. So what is your lighting schedule? I've actually did a couple of videos on my lighting schedule. If you just Google like ReefDudes Mobius schedule or ReefDudes Radeon schedule, you'll find it. And there is a link on reefdudes.com to it if you want to use my schedule. It's more or less 80 plus, but for a chunk of the day I have it a lot brighter white, so it's a very crispy white, and I also do that to get more par, plus I like that crisp white look as well. And I at least I feel that extra bit of like punch of the day gives that kind of like high noon, a little more par punch to try and pull a bit more color to stuff. Whether it does, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, my tank's looking good, so hopefully it's working. But what color of light would you suggest to use the least of? I personally go for like with the Radeons, like I have the Pros. I like the full spectrum lighting because the color you see is the color that's being reflected at you. So corals use mainly the blue spectrum, but like if you have a green slimer in your tank, right, and you have a bit of green LEDs, that's going to really highlight that green slimer even more. So it definitely helps have that full spectrum. It just makes things look more vibrant, pop more. Chuck, thank you. Keep it up. Thanks, buddy. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat, Chuck. Travis, did you find a Refugium better at raising / lowering CO2 levels than a scrubber, or are they about the same? Some claim scrubbers use more CO2 outside of air of the tank. I can't say I've noticed much of a difference on that one. Yeah, I can't say I've noticed a big difference. I'd run them both at the same time. They definitely both help, but really appreciate you doing this for the community. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate the thank yous. Makes me feel good. Warm and fuzzy inside. Ghouls, what are your views on adding bottle bacteria or bacteria additive to an established tank? So I know a ton of people that dose stuff like Microbacter 7 as kind of like a maintenance dose, just to prevent like cyano and other nasties in the tank. So tons of people I know swear by it. I don't do it regularly, but I do it randomly. So sometimes I'll like randomly just dump some in on the bacteria side. Now, I also do feel that it's good to have a very diverse bacteria in your tank, which is why I just kind of randomly add some in just to like up a bit more diversity in there. Thinking of Dendrobates. Oh, going to the dart frogs. I am currently thinking. Okay, thinking Dendrobates, Orpha. These are all dart frogs, by the way. Vivariums pair well with reef keeping, and RODI carries very well. Fruit flies, stingray. Yeah, the only downfall is I'd have to culture fruit flies for the dart frogs. That's my only like slight hold up so far. But I think it'd be cool otherwise. If I do it, I think it's called Aratus, the ones I was looking at, because you can keep them in groups. Or if you have more than a couple of certain dart frogs, they'll fight. Like the males will like literally, it looks like they're wrestling, trying to like pin the other one down and stuff like that. So there's only certain species that you can have more than 2 or 3 of. So that's why I'd probably lean towards that one. So I can put like 5 or 6 of them in there, and there's enough that you'll always see them out and active, which would be cool. All right, Sid, if you ever build a bigger tank like 1,800 gallons, what light would you use? 4 feet deep. 4 feet deep. That's a pretty deep tank. That's a good question, to be honest. I've never had a tank deeper than 2 feet. I'll get back to you on that one, Sid. I'm assuming that's your new tank you're currently building, so I'm curious to know what you go with. But I don't know. It'd be a lot of light though to go down that deep. Scrubbers don't claim to raise pH. They don't claim to, but anything that absorbs CO2 is going to indirectly help bump up pH. So you would a little bit, but it would be sweet to have a giant tank. I think one day I may end up with an in-wall tank. We'll see. I don't know. It'd be a pain to do the front though. I always worry about that, is how you'd maintain that one side. Did you learn the secret that I learned? Josh's frogs have 2 Vietnamese mossy frogs. Oh, lots of you guys have frogs. Okay, random question. I've been debating this. My channel has only been reef videos. If I throw the odd video up of vivariums and like other stuff, would people be interested in that? Let me know, because I've been curious. I've been torn if I like do a video on that or show some of my other random stuff or not. Yeah, ReefDudes. That's my Instagram. Fairly ironic, but it felt like it fit. I actually started another YouTube channel for that too, but I haven't done anything with it, so I've been torn on that one. Melanie, 3 months old tank, dosing Neophos to get my phosphates up. Should I dose Microbacter 7 as well, or does that defeat the purpose of Neophos? I don't think you need to as well for phosphates. Technically, the bacteria can help you reduce them, but they can also help with other stuff. So it's definitely not going to hurt to dose it, but I would just dose Neophos directly. It sounds like the main thing you're after. Paul, love to see your setups. Excellent. Definitely, Dendrobrady's definitely the bravest of the bunch, and plenty big to observe. ReefDudes like it. Yeah, so I don't know. If you guys are interested, so far I've only put photos on Instagram, but at ReefDudes if you want to see it. ReefDudes and ReefDudes. So it's funny because plants... I was never into plants before, but now it's like all these like random like McGravies and all these like plants from Ecuador and stuff, and it's like they're like land corals. It's crazy. It's weird. What's going on, Greg? What's the best way to balance an unbalanced nitrate phosphate ratio? I keep getting blooms. Okay, what are your parameters right now, ghouls? Is it nitrate or phosphate? What's one's out of whack? How far are you from Toronto? I'm in British Columbia, so I'm on the opposite coast. So Toronto is a decent plane ride for me. Would love you started doing planted tanks too. Cool to expand the hobby. I used to, before I got into reef tanks, I was hardcore into planted tanks. So this is like going back probably like 9 or 10 years ago now. And which was funny because before, I don't even know dosers existed then, but I remember I built my own doser to dose my fertilizers through the planted tank like 10 years ago with Arduino. I was like already automating all that stuff before I got into saltwater in the first place. Bruno Bars, thank you for $3 super chat. SPS dying, elk 8.6, pH 8.3, nitrates 5.3, phosphate 0. Your issue is 100% phosphate 0. Corals need phosphates, and because it's kind of a food source for them, if you don't have any phosphates, they're probably going to start paling out, which I'm guessing is what you're referring to, that dying. Either A, start feeding more, get something that's higher in phosphates, like get some reefroids and start feeding, or get some frozen food. But I would start feeding the tank more, or get something like neonitro and dose nitrates directly to the tank just to raise that up. Yeah, you never want 0. 0 is bad. Low is fine, but you need some in the tank. Cody Spencer, what's your favorite method for cycling a brand new tank with dry rock and no access to established rock or sand? Well, Cody, your only real option is bottle bacteria. So pick up something like Quickstart XLM or TurboStart or Dr. Tim's One and Only or multiple ones, but get some bottle bacteria. Now, as you add corals and stuff from other people's tank, each one's going to bring a little bacteria with it. But before you get to that stage, I would get some bottle bacteria, because you need something to start it. Technically, it will get some on its own, but you're going to do a lot quicker if you just spend the $30 on a bottle bacteria. Danicus Reef, are they noisy? Assuming you talk about the darts. Some are, some aren't, so it really depends which one you get. I have been just looking at ones that are really quiet, because, you know, it's 5-6 feet from me, and I don't want it being like loud in the background as I'm streaming or working. So do you think sand has effect on pH? I do. I recently added sand to the tank. It has been bare bottom for years. Part of the description on the bag says it helps maintain a natural pH of 8.2. So sand is like the aggregate or argonate aggregate, whatever you call it, but it does help buffer it to a certain extent. So sand definitely can help. It definitely adds stability to the tank, and it can help buffer to a certain degree. Jay, why is my ammonia constantly at 0.1, 0.2 even after a month? No new fish. Fish are happy. Dosing Microbacter 7 every day is still no luck. It could just very well be your test kit too. Like, ammonia is a trickier one for like the cheap test kits, especially in the low range. So it may well just honestly be your test kit, or your tank's not cycled. But if you went through your cycle where you've seen the ammonia, then the nitrite, then your nitrate, and you know for sure you're fully cycled, then I'm gonna say it could just be your test kit. Low nitrates, can't raise it even with potassium nitrate. The highest I get is 3 ppm phosphate. Is 3 ppm. 3 ppm is fine for nitrate. Like, phosphate 0.04. As long as nitrate is higher than 2, I'd be happy with that. That's fine. Phosphate 0.04. I mean, in theory, the ratio should be a smidge lower, but I wouldn't worry about it. I'd say you're okay, goals. I recently reached out to Facebook group, help with my acanophilia, and wanted to give a shout out to everyone that gave assistance. Awesome, Steve. Hopefully did well. Old school, use a pea in the tank. I've never used a pea. I've like ghost feeded a tank or just thrown a little mysis or something. Haven't tried peas yet though. Adrian, how often should Reefroids and AB Plus be fed? What's your choice of substrate? Substrate, this tank, I went with the Aquaforest Life Source, I think it's called. And my other tank with the MP60s, the higher flow, I did the Carib Sea special grade reef sand. As for Reefroids and AB Plus, that's the Red Sea one that looks like antifreeze. It's got like green glow. I honestly don't have a schedule. I just randomly do it. You know, one day I'll be extra motivated and I might do it 2 or 3 times. I might forget about it for a week and do it. So I suck at a schedule on that one. I just randomly do it when I have some free time and I'm inspired to do it. Greg, I actually have heard of people doing that. What's going on, Josh? I've also heard people using skimmate in there. So technically skimmate would be full of bacteria. So I mean, you could get someone's nasty skimmer. I don't know if I'd want to, but in theory it could work. Would you trust an API test kit for testing nitrate? I did when I first got into the hobby. Now, what do I use now? Well, now I use the Mastertronic, but I believe I use the Red Sea one, Red Sea Pro kit. That's what I used for a long time when I first started, because it was a semi-affordable kit that gave you all the basics. Do you have an approximate dosage per 100 liters of Calc for raising elk by 0? I do not have any calculations for Calc. I literally put a bunch in a reactor and I just dose it and see how it affects my numbers, and I just tweak it up or down from there. So I can't say how much it is to dose it for Calc. Calc will do it. I personally prefer to use a reactor. You can pre-mix it, then dose it. I'm too lazy for that. I like to have it just going through a reactor, and I just top off the reactor once in a while. I just feel it makes life super easy. It takes the guesswork out of it. It's consistent. But yeah, it's literally just start low, dose it, test. You know, if you need more, just add more, go more. Same with dosing. People ask me all the time, how do you start dosing? 3 Suns. Thank you for the 499 super chat. How do you start dosing? You need to test, right? Dose it. 24 hours later, test again. Is your number up or down? Okay, it's down. Okay, add more. If is it lower, if it's too high, dose less. So you just test and tweak. And usually after a few days, you get it pretty close to dialed in. Then you can go to testing kind of once a week. What's the inside info on Randy leaving BRS? I don't really know, but from the stream I watched, basically he just probably got a sweet offer at a place that's about 2 minutes from his house. I have no idea how long he worked from the office, but I know he's definitely outdoorsy and got a good offer that's super close to him, so it's probably more of a lifestyle job, I'm guessing. Three Sons. Do you think GHL will listen to users and make their controller software more user-friendly? I don't know, hopefully. I think they have fairly superior hardware to most, but yes, their software could definitely use some love. It's not the most intuitive. I have a computer science degree, and it still takes me a while to figure out a lot of the stuff on GHL. So, I mean, it's definitely a good controller, but it's not as user-friendly of a controller. So, hopefully, it'd be awesome if they did. Do you think two A500X with reef braid strips would be too much for a 49 by 31 by 23? I wouldn't say it'd be too much. I think it'd work though. I think that would be a decent option for lighting. Just started using LifeSource for biodiversity. How do you like it so far? So far so good, Producer Reef. I added hopefully good. No complaints, so I think it's working well. Shelly, $5 super chat. Thanks, Evan. Thank you very much. Is a pH of 8.55 safe for an SPS dominated tank? I have never had mine that high. However, Chummingham's Reef, he was running his around that. He was on my stream a few weeks ago, and he seemed to think everything was thriving and doing awesome with it. I know Chris from ACI pushes pretty high pH, and same thing. He says stuff's just growing like crazy. Ed, do you use any Aquaforest products? I've used their dosing supplements, like the Pro version. That works well. I have used, I have their sand in the tank behind me. So yeah, I've used some of the random stuff, and their LifeSource, their trace element type sand. I also have that in my water box. So I do use some of the random products. Adrian, have you ever put new rocks to soak in a bin until you're ready to start a new tank? I sure have. So with my water box tank, I pre-made my skate for that one, and I took it like apart in pieces-ish, and I put it in a brute bin, and I pre-cycled it before I even started the tank. So the rocks were in a bin for, I'm going to say, 4 to 6 weeks, and I dumped in copious amounts of Brightwell's Microbacter Quick Start XLM. Yeah, I guess it's basically the more concentrated version of Microbacter 7. So I dumped in tons of that stuff in there, and I pre-cycled the rock. And now to feed it, I was dosing pure ammonia. So I just put a squirt some ammonia in there every week or two. And I use that to build up a very strong bacteria culture on the new rock before I put it in the tank. That way, once I had the tank, I set it up, it's basically already cycled. So definitely a good way to pre-cycle rock, especially if you're waiting for your tank for a while. It just helps things be established a lot quicker. Do you Neptune making a new controller? I am not Neptune. Do you Neptune? Do I think Neptune's making a new controller? They will eventually, for sure. Who knows how long, but I'm sure at some point they will. Do you think low K or MO or Nrso can cause a tank crash? Too high can. They can definitely cause trouble. Too much potassium is trouble. Too low, I don't know if you'll crash a tank, but you could potentially have issues in your tank, right? Your stunted growth or stuff might not be happy, or brittle skeletons, not enough strontium. So, for sure. Craig, not great software engineering. Yep. Hello, Nix Genesis. Grabbing a torch and Scholar for 200, getting a steal of a deal. Nice. What's going on, HCB Chemistry? pH that high makes SPS brittle. I don't know. Never had it that high. I'm gonna look. Whatever mine right now is my record, probably, sadly. It is currently 8. Oh shit, 8.39. Look at that. It's sunny out, and I've had the doors open today. Look at that, 8.39. That is a record for me. So, legitly, if I look at all for the last little while, that's definitely a record. It's a good day. It's getting warm out. Windows are open. Glorious. What's a good backup battery for people that use unbranded low-end wave makers and equipment to increase power outages? Make your own, man. I have done I think I've done 3 or 4 different videos and different builds of DIY battery backups. on that note, you can pick up something like these nice big heavy beasts, like 22 amp hour battery. Basically wire this up to run your pump and have like a trickle charger on the battery, and you'll get a ton of use out of it. If you want super light and portable, lithium iron phosphate is probably a smaller, much lighter package, but these are fairly inexpensive and they can run a pump for quite a while. So yeah, definitely check out some of my videos on DIY battery backups, because they're not too bad to make, and it will definitely save your tank. Is 1450 to 500 meg too high? It's on the higher end, but that's still okay. My magnesium always tends to be fairly high as well. Actually, I think it's pretty close to that now, to be honest. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about that meg. I think you're fine. Migs, I'm at a pH of 8.4 and want to dose even more calc for alk. What do I do? If you don't want your pH to go any higher, I mean, technically you could dose something like vinegar and acid to suppress your pH, but I wouldn't really do that. I would literally just pick up a 2-part additive and dose some sodium carbonate or bicarb directly to the tank. So just dose an alk supplement on top of it. So, oh, there you go. Actually, yeah, I have them around 1400 meg. But yeah, no, I wouldn't worry about your meg. 1350 to 1450 is generally the recommended range. I've had mine, 15 something, and 1450 to 1500, and 0 issues I've seen on it. Torches and SPS love it high, correct? Just worried about putting my snails in. So too high. So if you're magnesium, 15, 1600 and higher, some inverts will not like that for sure. I know back in the day, people would do really high magnesium. I think it was like Kent's Megs to fight Bryopsis. I don't really know how well that worked, but I know that was one of the methods that people did way back when. Too much. There's a balance on point to influence the growth rate colorations. Yeah, so a lot of things a little bit elevated can help growth, but too much is borderline. Can be trouble for certain things. Like, I know I got my potassium way too high when I was dosing all my pH buffer deluxes, and to the point where Chris was like, do a big water change. She's like, you're hitting the line. I was like, ugh. So I did a big 50-gallon water change and knocked it back down, and that ended my KOH dosing for a long time. What else we got? Have a prime 16 over my 20 cube. Is it worth getting diffuser for the light? I've never personally used a diffuser on a prime. I don't really think you need it for a prime, personally. But personal preference on that one. I have them on my Radions just because I don't know why I do. It's not a huge difference. It makes a smidge softer and spreads a bit better, but I don't think I would on a prime personally, but personal choice. How do you get your clownfish to host? Clowns will host anything, and get them to host something specific can be a challenge. I have seen some put the clowns with like a little breeder box type of thing with an enemy to try and get them to be friends. Mine are currently hosting a green Nephia in the very back corner of my tank, but they tend to just host anything. Reef and Chill. It's a shame that LFS even sells pH buffer. It does more harm than good in almost every situation. Yeah, you don't really want to use pH buffers unless you know what you're doing. And most pH buffers, you're just dosing elk to your tank, right? So that could just get you in trouble. What do you think of the extra detritus in the overflow box every 6 months? Accumulate an inch worth. Wondering if it's good to insert or not. For extra detritus, every 6 months, it's probably worth just sucking out the water change hose. It's more just going to add extra nutrients to your tank. I mean, if you have 0 nutrients, maybe you want it there, right? And maybe it's a good thing. But if you're fighting nutrients, it's probably good to suck it out every, 4 to 6 months and just clear it out. What is your view on gold torches, Aussie versus Indo? I've lost 2 torches, Nyx and Hellfire, out of nowhere after months of thriving. I have other torches that are doing well and growing. Aussie torches, I haven't had the best of luck with. I have way better luck with Indo torches. Aussies are very slow growing. They tend to be much chunkier skeletons, where Indos will be skinnier skeletons and they tend to grow faster. I have a really big Dragon Soul torch in my water box, which is awesome, thriving. But yeah, same thing. I've had another torch bit the dust on me, where my Indo one's been happy. So I personally had the best luck with Indo torches. What's going on? Dr. Wilson Magic. Long time no see, buddy. Pro T-Rex remodeling. Can I cut the dead half of my anemone off? I don't know how you have half happy and half not, unless it's splitting, but you think the other half would bounce back. I don't know. I've never seen an anemone like that. It's usually all good or not good at all. Adam K. Just curious why you don't have a Trident being a Neptune guy. I am an everything guy. I have a GHL one tank, I have a Neptune on the other. I don't have one. I've thought about getting one just to try it because I get asked about it a bazillion times. But the reason I ever got one in the first place is because I already had an Alcatronic for like a year beforehand. So it didn't quite make sense to pick up a Trident, but I've debated getting one just to have one for like comparison, try it out, see how it is. So yeah, one aspect, it'd almost be nice to have like something to compare against each other and, you know, hold each other accountable, but who knows. That's the main reason I ever got one. Do you feed your corals? If so, what and when? I broadcast feed my tank all the time. So my main staple is probably PE mysis, which gets fed to the tank almost every day. I feed nori in the mornings, feed mysis at night. I randomly add in Canalus, which is those little tiny orange things. I feel that's really good coral food. I also like a lot of the reef nutrition stuff, like the oyster eggs or the oyster feast and some of their products, and I will randomly put those in. So sometimes I will bust out like reefroids and like a baster, like the Julian's thing, and I'll spot feed stuff. But the majority of the time, I just like broadcast feed the whole tank and stuff goes everywhere. Probably not the best for nutrients, but when I do that, I also leave my return pumps off for about 45 minutes. That way, you know, after that 5-10 minutes, the fish got all the big stuff, but all the little bits are still cycling around the tank, and it gives your corals time to catch it and feed. So that's basically how I feed my corals. Cue balls, what's the best way to color up zoas? Mine are looking kind of dull. Zoas, I've never done anything special for. You can dose iodine, which in theory helps them. Again, I just broadcast feed the tank. The zoas probably catch some of it. If you have... It's possible if you give zoas too much light, that I could have an issue with that. You know, if one is suffering, generally if you just put it down on lower flow and lower light, it'll kind of bounce back after a bit. What's good? What's happening, Adam? But I've seen people with 50 nitrates and 0.7 phosphates, SPS, are super colorful, don't know, grows fast. Okay, so if you have really high nitrates and phosphates, you tend to get much deeper, darker colors out of your acros. If you have really low nitrates and phosphates, you tend to get lighter. If you're super low, you'll get to the pastel stage, but you get much lighter colors out of your corals. So I don't like it too low because I like the deeper, darker colors out of corals. So I like that look. I mean, it depends on the coral. I mean, there's some corals that look better later. So it's always a trade-off. Now, if you have really high nutrients, you know, you can push high flow and high light as well, right? Where if you're super low nutrients, you can't really push those out. So it's a bit of a scale where you gotta keep everything in that balance. Wild collector acros are rough. Wouldn't advise for anyone who wasn't ready to lose whatever money putting in. Yeah, I hear that a lot. It's like Russian roulette if you get a handful of them to actually make it. Got a question about gold torches. Recently picked up 2 Indo and Malaysian, I believe. Both Dragon Soul. Nice. I have a ton of Dragon Souls. That's actually my best growing torch. My tank is Dragon Soul by far out of every torch I've had. That one's been just happy for me, which has been awesome. Skimmer or no skimmer when battling dinos? Currently around 80 nitrates. That's a good chunk. Now, with dinos, it depends what type of dinos you have. UV can definitely help. If it is the kind that's photosynthetic, then throwing UV on there can definitely help. I haven't dealt with dinos in ages, but I did do a few good streams on it way back when, so it might be worth going back and watching this. There was also a good method with crews that we did way back when. And I do have that graphic posted in the Facebook group of the instructions. So if you just join the ReefDudes Facebook group, link in the description, and just search for dinos, that should pop up. But that does have, you know, how much to dose of what, and kind of like a week or 2 week regime to beat them. And tons, if you read the comments, tons of people that work for them. So check that out. Should I do water changes on a cycling frag tank? Zero ammonia, but not ready for corals. If you have zero nitrates and you only have nitrates, aka your cycle is finished, then yes, I would do a big water change to knock your nitrates down. But if your tank is still cycling, then I wouldn't do that yet, because I just let it finish cycling before I do a big water change. But do a big one, knock your nitrates down, then you can add corals, and your frag tank should be okay. Dr. Wealth Magic, 45 minutes, I only give it 10. Yep. So it's 40 or 45 minutes I leave my return pump off. It's okay. If you turn your return pump on too fast, all that frozen food is just going to go down into your sump, into your sock, your filter roller, whatever else, into your filtration. I want that filter roller to last a long time. So I'm not going to be putting down other stuff that could be free coral food, right? So filter roller lasts longer, more food for the corals, win-win. That's my theory. So I like a nice long feed mode. Always a great stream. Thank you. Can I see your Apex app on the phone? Please explain how to read salinity pH graph readings. Confuses me. Yeah, sure. I can show you that. Do not disturb mode. Okay, so let me see if I can get fancy and share my phone on the screen. Give me one sec. We will get fancy for you here. We can go through some Apex stuff if you want. Dun, dun, dun. Where is casting? Almost there. Maybe. Well, if my phone decides to show up on the computer, then I'll do it. So we'll get back to that one in a second. Do you still run an algae scrubber? I don't at this moment. I probably will. I don't really have any nutrients on this tank, so I have not put it back on yet. But at some point in time, I likely will. Why is it not mirroring my phone? This is the better question. Let me restart this app and see if it works. Now it's just bugging me when something doesn't work. Dun, dun, dun. I think you make a great replacement for Randy on BRS. Thank you. The only problem is I don't think I'd want to move to Minnesota. I like my house. Do you know how much work it'd be to move all the reef tanks? Oof. That'd be the worst part. But yeah, probably would be fun. If I could work remotely, I might be in. Okay, so Gulf City Reefer, tell us a good story of yours. What do you want to know a story about? Pick something and I can help you out there. Hit that thumbs up. Great justice. Thanks, Mix. I hope and wish Neptune would come up with pages to organize stuff. Tabs would really be nice. I wish you could have tabs for certain things. I think that would be good. Alright, my phone's not playing nice with the mirroring for some reason. Probably needs a reboot or something like that. But for reading the graphs, so that focus. So overall, the graphs are fairly easy on their own. If you, like on mine, people always ask how I get elk in there. That is from the Alcatronic. And if I click on a day, basically you can just see what's at which point in the day. Click through it and there's my elk readings every 12 hours or so. So it's just more for historical data to see everything. What I find useful is when you start overlaying stuff in the graph. So you can see, okay, here's your one page of the graph. You can overlay something else and you can kind of see the cause and effect of different experiments. Now, another cool one, my next project, I still need to find a Neptune ASM module, which is the one that comes with the par monitoring kit. But I bought a Siemens CO2 meter that I'm going to wire into the apex. So then I'll be able to see the CO2 of the room and how it correlates to the pH graph on the apex. So I think that's going to be super cool. So whenever I eventually find one of those ASM modules, I'm going to build that out. I think that's going to be a cool one. I had way too many things. Top fail. Top fail. What have I done? I'm sure I've done many stupid things over the years, but I'll let you know once like one comes to me. But I've definitely had my fair share, like everybody. Share the link to the CO2 meter. It is. It was about $80-90 off of eBay. And it is a Siemens CO2 meter. So it is this guy. So this is a CO2 meter. And it has the 0, I don't know if it's 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 volt output. And that is what I'm going to pipe into the ASM module. So I will definitely do a video on it once the time comes, but I'm just going to mount this baby behind the tank. And this is how I'll be able to pull the room CO2 readings into the apex. I think that's going to give us some really cool info to start playing with and kind of see how different things affect it. So that'll be cool. Have you ever really successfully eliminated Aptasia out of a reef tank? Okay, Copper Band that I have is a freaking all-star. He has devoured it. This tank, no more Aptasia. Now, Copper Band does a wonderful job. There is also, if you breed little nudibranchs, these guys are also little miracles for eating Aptasia. And you can see a couple on the glass in there. You can see some in there. You can see a couple in there. But yeah, these guys are magic for Aptasia. They just devour it. So when they eat, the hard part is keeping up with enough Aptasia to keep them fed, to be honest. So am I going to any shows? I'm not sure when the next show will be. It's getting closer to potential. It's becoming less of a pain to travel, so there's more and more hope as time goes on. I'll start going to shows again. Before pre-pandemic madness, I was going to a show almost monthly. It was tons of fun, so I do miss it. Going to start a marine tank, getting 7 TDS from my RODI. You're likely safe, yes. If you want it to be 0, just add some DI afterwards. Oh, if you're getting 7 TDS from yours, that means your DI is exhausted, so I'd put a new DI cartridge in and then you'll be back to 0 after that. Randomly pulls up a jar of creatures, no big deal. Those are Aptasia eating nudibranchs. Awesome little Aptasia devourers. But yes, the hard part is keeping enough Aptasia to keep feeding them. That is definitely the trickiest bit. Okay, so Paul, I've crashed my tank for not understanding that you must use reef salt and non-reef salt to have corals. Whew, what the heck did you use for non-reef salt? It's like grocery store? How often do you send in an ICP test? Whew. In a perfect world, every 4 to 6 months. It's probably been at least 6-8 months I've done it. Oh, worst fail. Thank you. You just reminded me. I've done my salinity got super duper low in my tank. In the water box. I don't know if it was from my dosing tubes getting worn or my calibration being off or me adding too much calc, but my salinity got super low in my water box, like super low, and I panicked but everything still looked great, but of course I panicked and I raised it up too fast, and of course I lost some coral. A few things are stressed. Now, thankfully, I didn't fully lose anything, but I lost a chunk of my fox flame. Like a whole all the growth in the middle basically was RTNing, STNing on me. That, the rainbow or vivid confetti, and something else. But, so basically what I did is I kind of chopped out all the parts I was STNing, put a little super glue around the edge. And this is the fallout from my salinity being way too low and likely me actually raising it too fast. I should have realistically raised it back up to where it should have been over 2 weeks, not 3 or 4 days. So I went too fast on changing, and that was the fallout. But thankfully, I still had growth on the outside, and it's been growing back over the stuff I fragged off. So it's not quite there, but at least it's regrowing, so not all for loss. Nudies get eaten by filefish every time. So you know what? I had a new filefish with my nudies in the little Zoa tank that was in my office for ages, and I thought I had 0 nudies and nudibranchs left in there. And as I took out the filefish, I sold him. I'm like, okay, you're basically done your job. And I found like 30 nudibranchs in there, and they're all just hiding under the rack in different places. So nudies are very, very good hiders. So you might think you have none, and you find some. Even the other day, I found like this huge sucker in my sump of the water box. What am I drinking? This is a random concoction. It's like passion fruit and like honey puree, and just add some water to it and a little splash of something tasty. It's like a healthy-ish concoction. Booster man, I got 2 Banggai cardinals. They're not eating. I've tried frozen mice as brine, various pellets. Do I need to go for live brine or copepods? I mean, they will likely go after that. I've never had something not eat frozen mice, to be honest. Frozen mice is always like my go-to that everything eats. What about cleaner shrimp with them? I haven't tried cleaner shrimp with the nudies, to be honest. I used to have cleaner shrimp for like years, and then one day they disappeared. I blame the hawkfish. 2 shots of goslings in there. What I put a shot of? I put some green apple sourpuss or something like that. A shot of that in there. Healthy cocktail. How often do you feed your livestock? I feed nori in the mornings, so they get their veggies in the morning, and I feed usually something meatier, like some pellets, either PE pellets or Reef Nutrition's TDO pellets. Randomly I'll feed that, or mysis is kind of like majority of the time what I feed. Started going back to school. I have 4.0 and made the president's list twice so far. Studying IT. Nice work, Paul. Nicely done. Nicely done. Worst fail, thinking the fish I wanted would fit in a 650 gallon. Yeah, you got big fish, man. I'm super excited to see your new build. It's gonna be pretty cool. Yeah, so a lot of my fails are doing stupid things. Like, it's something where someone asked me, I would tell them what to do properly, but then of course you don't always do it yourself, which is terrible. But what dosers do you use? I'm currently using Versas. So Ecotech Versa, I know they're a pain to get right now. I'm not gonna lie, I beta tested them, so I was lucky and got some of them beforehand, and I got a few more afterwards. But I'm using those. They're awesome little pumps because you can do down to like 0.001 of a mil up to a couple hundred mils per minute. So awesome pumps. I use them for feeding calc, water changes, dosing, like everything. The only one thing to note, if you are using them for continuous duty purposes, like a calcium reactor or a calc reactor or auto water changes, then just make sure you change the little tubings inside of them kind of every like 4 or 5 months. Because it does, over time, it will get a little squished and it won't push water as well as it gets brittle. I haven't noticed any issues with my dosing, but I noticed with the calcium reactor mainly, basically the ones that are running 24/7 with tank water through it. But awesome pumps, just do the maintenance on the tubing, so, and you should be good. Sid, bamboo sharks, and had like 18 tangs plus other fish plus coral. Love it. Tons of stuff, man. They are, I've never had a shark. I've never had a tank big enough. That was pretty cool. 18 tangs, pretty solid. Okay, other question. Tangs. Lots of people ask, how do you get, so many tangs in a tank? Or how do you stop aggression? Tracy Spellman was going to ask what you're drinking. Already answered that. My weekly support. Thank you for the $10 super chat, buddy. Always appreciated. So with the tangs, one, if you can add them at the same time, that makes a big difference. If they already have established territories, they're usually going to be more of a bugger to newcomers in the tank. Same thing also if you add a smaller one, if you have an established big one, he may be a punk to newer ones. Now, tricks that I have done in the past is, you add a new one, and if he's being a punk to the other tank, I've separated them where I took some of that crafting mesh. I don't know if I have any, but it's like that little like waffly X stuff that they use for like crocheting. It's like a buck or two at like a dollar store or like a crafting store. And I made like a wall in the tank and legitimately separated them for like a week or two to give the new guy time to settle in before I remove that. The other thing you can do is put a mirror on the side of the tank, because they're always more of a punk to their own versus another fish. So then they'll just fight with the mirror and give the other one time to settle in. So there's a couple things I've done with tangs to get them to play nice. Hot water treatment on tubing. Josh, hot water treatment on the tubing rather than replacing it. I will try that. I'm curious. I've debated actually just buying like a massive roll and just recurving my own chunk on it, but next time I replace one, I'll throw it in hot water and see what happens. I'm curious. You've piqued my interest now. Do you worry about humidity in your house from the tanks? Looking at advice on having tanks in smaller than 10 by 10. Okay, if you have humidity issues, you can A, put a top on the tank, and that's going to reduce humidity. B, you can get a dehumidifier, which pulls all the moisture out of the air, which can work well. However, they're not the cheapest for electricity. Or C, you can go more hardcore and get an air exchanger, and that's going to help pull the humidity out of your house and bring fresh air in. So that's what I've actually done in the house now, and it has reduced my humidity by a good chunk. Actually, where's my phone? What is my humidity now? I haven't even looked in ages. Let's see what the Nest says. So I definitely was much higher in the past for humidity. Yeah, so right now my inside humidity is 43%. You know, I used to be at more like 55, 60%. So, and I'm just running it fairly low right now, so I'm not even running it on max. So air exchanger, if you're really worried about it and you want like long-term, best way to go. If you just want something to deal with it now, put a lid on your tank or just get a dehumidifier. But yeah, in a small room and a really big tank might be an issue. If you have a tiny tank, you're probably fine. If you've got a window, open your window. So depends where you live. It's all different things. Phil, what's going on, Reef Keeper? Been listening while doing some fragging. Excellent, Phil, excellent. They're speaking of fragging, my red dragon is getting huge lately. Actually, it's the one in the thumbnail, so you probably saw it. But one thing that amazed me, I don't know if you can see it in the photo. I can't. So I was super surprised by this. You can't see it in this pic, but the red dragon is starting to grow into the Monipora stellata, and so the green one on the side there, and it was starting to kill it and starting to grow and encrust around it, which is super crazy. But needless to say, I got to give this guy a bit of a trim because it's starting to grow into everything else. But it's so happy and it's growing huge. The bright pink looks super cool. Henra, just found rust buildup in my pump. What's the best solution to clear it up? Clear the rust out of the water, and what can cause it? Now, if it's actual rust, I would use, what's that one called that sucks all the nasties out? What the heck's it called? Brightwell makes a product that I've used that pulls out all the nasties. Pureit. That's what I would use. That sucks out heavy metals and tons of other stuff. There also is some of those little like foam sponges you could put in that sucks out heavy metals, but Pureit is kind of like a carbon, but it also sucks out a lot of the nasties. So I would personally just run some Pureit in a reactor for a little bit and let that suck out that stuff, or do some big water changes. Take your pick, but that's what I would do. Not reef related, but I'd love to see a shot of your PC/desk setup. I will show one. I think in the near future, once I finish cleaning my office, because it's still a bit of chaos, I'll show off like the full office, because I got the tank here, I got the desk here, and my buddy Derek just built me a custom shelf thing for my vivarium that I'm building. So it's like jungle on one side of me and then the reef tank on the other side of me. So I'll do a little bit of like an office tour and show off the Viv and show off some other stuff. I'll do that in the near future. Everything's starting to get settled. I just got to finish cleaning up the chaos first. It'll be good. So under the threat, it will happen in the future. Phil, Red Dragon's amazing coral. Love the shape. Did okay in my 525, but it's jamming in Maddie's Reef. Nice. Yeah. Polyfilter and Pureit, 100%. Great way to go. Yeah, Red Dragon is growing like crazy in my tank. Like it's just hit its stride, and every time I look at it, it almost feels like it's bigger. Now, once I'm gonna mix up the rock a little bit, because the Art Reef rock that they made me a sweet scape, which I'm super excited to unbox and check that out later. So I'll probably throw some into this tank once I change it up, but I'm excited. All right, clutch newbie question here. Check my phosphate level 4 or 5 days ago. It was at 0.03. I checked today and now it's at 0.11. Why did my phosphate shoot up like that? Well, that's a big jump in a very short amount of time. You might have tested right after you fed, which could do it. Or if you've been feeding with a shovel, I mean, that could also get your phosphates up. But that is a pretty decent swing. So I'm going to guess you potentially had a testing error, or you tested too soon after feeding when your tank didn't eat it all up yet. Those are my guesses. What else we got? But yeah, now we're in. What else you guys got for questions? Fire them at me. Random Q&A stream. What do you want to know? How hard would it be to drill through the floor and run my lines to the garage right underneath? It really depends what your floor is made of, but it's surprisingly easy to run wires. So a couple things I've done. I've ran wires from my attic down, and what I did is I popped off the baseboard and cut a little slit at the bottom of the drywall so I can just pull stuff under the baseboard, and you put your baseboard back and it's all perfect again. You can also run lines through like a cold air return. Another one I ran up through my attic and I just went through the little stud wall, found that in the attic and dropped my wires into that. So there's lots of ways you can get creative in running wires. So in general, it's not too bad to actually do it, to be honest. Phil, every time red dragons start to get big, it would always RTN. Whew. Dang, hopefully that doesn't happen to me. Sid, mind if I use your logo and get some signage from Kyle in the fish room? You can rock a ReefDudes logo. I'm in. I'll send Kyle the photos if you want to do something cool. But I expect some good photos, Sid. Could be cool. On a 50-gallon SPS reef, should I use ESV 2-part or a calcium reactor? I would probably use ESV on a 50-gallon. Calcium reactor, I'm going to say you don't really need until you have a heavily stocked. I'm going to say like 150-gallon plus 200-gallon. ESV works very well, and it already has all your trace amounts into it, so it's a pretty cool product. So I would use ESV personally out of the two options. Is your Refugium after your skimmer or before your skimmer? My Refugium is after my skimmer. However, I don't really think it makes that big of a difference. Some people worry about like sucking up pods and different things, but honestly it doesn't matter. You can put it before or after. The advantage of Refugium after your skimmer is it will work as a massive bubble trap, so it's going to catch any little micro bubbles. But yeah, either way, it's not a big deal. I've been there. I worried about those little things back in the day, but I've tried both systems and I can't say I've noticed much of a difference aside from Chato being a big bubble trap. But as long as you have a baffle, you sponges something in the way, something will take care of it for anyways. I know everyone tries to advocate not chasing numbers, but are there any numbers from the big three elements, NO3, PO4, you'll feel you're happy with, seem to get the best results? PO4, 0.03 to 0.09, anywhere in that range, I'm happy. Nitrates, 2 to 20, anywhere in that range, I'm happy. Now, if one's really high and one's really low, I mean, your scale's a bit off. Ideally, you want to keep that ratio, you know, if you're on the lower end of phosphates, if you're lower end of nitrates, high end of phosphates, higher end of nitrates. But that's generally the kind of system or range I go for. Bert, how is your battery backup system been operating since you installed it with the solar panels and new batteries? Okay, so I have really old batteries, but on that system, so one of my prior jobs, they replaced a bunch of data center batteries, so I snagged a bunch of the ones they were taking out. They're still perfectly good, but they're out of warranty, so they swapped them. So I have like stupid amounts of battery backup because they were free, so can't go wrong with that. But I think they're 143 or 147 amp hours, and I have 4 of them. So there's like 600 amp hours. The batteries are old, so I'm probably getting half of the capacity, but still 300 amp hours, 400 amp hours. So even despite them being super old batteries, there's still tons and tons of life out of them. I never have a power outage more than like a couple hours, so they definitely work. I have them running MP60s, and if I want the return pump on the tank. Ben, can the Mastertronic be hooked up to an Apex to display values like on the Neptune app? Sadly, they cannot. At least not at this moment. It would be nice if they did, though. I would really appreciate if Neptune would expand back to the thing. I know back in the day, Neptune was really good at being like control everything, and then they kind of got less control everything because they had all their own ecosystem. So I'm really hoping with, you know, all the changes and everything, hopefully they go back to the control everything mentality. But I currently have my Alcatronic hooked up to the Neptune through the pH port, and I do the exact same thing on the GHL. So any control A can do that because it does it directly through there. But yeah, it would be cool if they had a nice way to do it. MIGs, I chase numbers wholeheartedly, especially pH. I've been more pH obsessed. I don't know why. I think a lot of people have been the last little while. Jared, is there a difference between the thinner red dragon branching Acros and thought the thicker bridging Acros green slimer, etc.? Red dragon is a smooth skin deep water acro, or the other ones are stags or other types of ones. So different, yeah, they're different species of coral for sure. Not really care difference. In general, smooth skin's like a bit lower lighting. The only big thing I'd say is with the smooth skin, I have never had good success dipping them. Now they tend not to get really many pests because on the smooth skins, if you frag out the base, you're probably fine. But every time I dip a smooth skin, it never does well. So I do very light dips on them, or I just avoid dipping them. What about KH, Kel, and Mag? KH between 8 and 9 is generally what I shoot for. You know, 7 to 11 is a general range. I usually target 8.5-ish. Calcium, more than 400. Mine's usually like 450, 480. Magnesium, generally 1350 to 1450 range. Phil, Dev, I know you use the G5 Pros, but have your hands on the blue. I just picked up a blue for the frag in my sump. Do you run AB Plus or the blue custom? Trying WWC Lagoon. I originally had one Pro and one blue to play with, so I have played with the blues when I originally had them. I like the Pros a smidge better, but the blues are still awesome. So either one could work, and I would honestly be happy with either one. I did load my schedule into both of them, and minus like the one lime green, or there's one color that didn't quite match up, but otherwise you can get them looking pretty dang close. Can I feed fish pellets to my coral? You Acros, no. Some LPS will eat the pellets. Some make, if they're smaller pellets, some cans will, some plate corals will. So some corals will eat pellets. See you later, Sid. Is there a difference between the thinner branching Acros, red dragon, and thicker Acros? If you're talking about deep water, probably not overly. Nice desk setup. Thank you. I work from home and on the computer all day, so I definitely pimped out the desk setup because I basically am on this all day, every day, doing IT stuff, so gotta make it comfy. Do you feed Phyto daily? When I cultured Phyto, I fed it daily. Now that I don't culture it, I do randomly feed the reef nutrition stuff, so it's definitely not daily, but I do randomly, we'll just douse it into the tank. Phyto will be good for some corals, is good for filter feeding corals. If you culture, or if you want to boost your pod population, pods eat Phyto, so that will help your pods reproduce more. So there's definitely benefits to dosing Phyto. Have you heard Quanta Pro lights? How good are they compared to Reef Brights and other similar LED bars? I have not tried them, so I can't really say on that one. So yeah, otherwise, yeah, overall Tangs happy. This one's probably gonna end up with a new aquascape this week. Not fully new, but partially new, because I got some really cool stuff built. So I'm super stoked to see how it all turned out. So that's probably going to be my project for this weekend, I think. Alright guys, what are we at? An hour and a bit in. Probably cutter done fairly soon, so I don't think I'm going to go super late tonight. But if there's any other questions, fire them my way, and we will see what we can get answered. Any I missed? Yeah, Phil, you should, just for fun, you should try my schedule and see how you like it. I'm curious to see what you think about it. I have it in the daytime. I got like a really cool blend where it's AB plus the rest of the day, which most people use, but for that 4 hours it gets very like crispy white, but it still has vibrant color pop, at least with the pros it does. Favorite online place to buy coral? I honestly haven't bought corals online in ages, so I'm a bad one for that. I tend to just buy them in person when I go to places or go to shows and go to different places. There's been a few times I've bought corals and, you know, it's not like the photo and then you're all bummed out and it sucks. But, and I'm also like super cheap. So I will like, I'll go in on a group buy, but I won't just buy like 2 corals unless it's like you get enough for free shipping. So for the most part, in the initial, when I first started my tank, I did, but now I have enough that I'll just try and trade corals with people rather than buying them. So that's a good way to go. Are there any bits of equipment on the wish list moving forward? There probably will be. I don't know what I want yet, but probably. Honestly, I have most things, like a pretty good setup on both my tanks. There's nothing I need, but there's always new cool things that are fun to play with. So I will get back to you on that one. What's your pick for a budget doser? If you're a super duper budget, you can pick up a Jabo doser for under $100 for 4 heads. It's not going to be like a fraction of a mil accurate, but for dosing, you know, 4 mils or 5 mils, just for general dosing. I used the Jabo one for years when I first started, so that's probably a good like intro budget. Komor has some decent ones now, which are getting fairly affordable. Apparently they use my screenshots to mean their ads for a while, punks. But they make some decent ones that aren't too, they're a little more expensive than Jabo, but they're higher quality as well. The ranch, same, I'd rather buy place like QT their corals than a frag swap. It is nice if you buy from someone that has, you know, quarantine and, you know, they treat their system well. I personally prefer to get stuff more locally and just, I like to see stuff in person. Not saying that I don't order online, I just don't do it very often. Some Grandy Pallies, they need to frag of a tile, any tips? So Palithoa grandis, I believe those ones might be some of the ones that are a little more on the Palithoa toxic side, so those are probably ones you definitely want to wear a mask and some glasses for safety. I mean, I don't know about a mask, but probably safety glasses just in case, don't get squirt. Gloves. Honestly though, if they're on a tile, like I've just cut them with scissors or a scalpel. But those are ones I would be a little more cautious with when fragging. Most Zoas, not too worried about it, but those ones I would be a little more so. At any point ever in your tanks, have you used no-pox? Asking this, I'm heavy populated and I feed heavy. I have used no-pox probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I did no-pox, done vinegar dosing, they all worked. Most recently, I used Little Cube's NitroGuard, and that was more of a passive carbon dosing method, which actually worked really well to lower down my nitrates in the water box. They used to be like 50 or 60, something crazy. Now they're like 5 or less. So it's I'm actually amazed, and they stayed down, and I'm basically Q's have dissolved. So I don't know which witchcraft it is, but those did work very well for me. Can I use mineral-only salt? I don't know what mineral-only salt is, but I would use proper reef salt if I were you. I'm assuming it's not reef salt that you're trying to use. If you're trying to do the budget route, just find some instant ocean, get something cheap, but get salt made for a saltwater reef tank. I know early in the chat, someone was saying one of their biggest things was using non-reefing salt in a tank. Didn't work out as well. There's a lot of other elements and minerals into it aside from just salt, so definitely use proper salt. But yeah, so Romeo, 300 gallon tank. So no box definitely does work. I know my buddy Dylan uses it on a doser and he swears by it. He uses it all the time. And basically instead of doing refugiums and other stuff, he does doses. I think he has no pox, and I think he uses phosphate E on a doser, and he just manages his nutrients that way. So definitely is a good method of doing it. Tracy, 112 people watching, 114, smash that like button. Alright guys, if you're enjoying it, always hit that like button. Makes the YouTube god algorithms happy, which is good for the channel, so always appreciated. Alright guys, I think I've answered all the lingering questions. So I think I'm going to call it for today. Still got a bunch of running around and stuff to get done today. But thank you guys for hanging out. Always appreciated. Am I still doing the moonshine? Yes, I am. I actually just got a bunch of refills and stuff from Andre. And I haven't used it in like a month. I keep planning on reusing it. But I want to do a fresh ICP tense. So I'm going to get that done pretty soon. Beedle, what's going on, buddy? I was just talking about you. Did you say NitroGuard is what you use? I did use it. I used, I think 2 different canisters of it, and it took my nitrates from like I think they were like 60 or 70 or something. They were way too high for me. And I got them way down, and now they're like 2 or 3, and I haven't dosed anything for nitrates in ages. So that did work very well. Instant T, hi Devin, just want to thank you. Just a quick one. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Haha, you were. I will, Mr. B. Dylan. I knew it was you. All right, Tracy, Melanie, Shelly, Three Sons, Bruno, Chuck, and thank you guys for the super chats, much appreciated. Have G5XR15, but I can't seem to figure out how to set the spectrum setting to look not that blue. Just go into your schedule, pick a point, and you can drag the blues down or drag up the whites and the other colors. Or yeah, that's what I do. Louis, #1 rule for success: test your tank, make sure all the basics are kept stable. Things will be happy. Trying to put your tank in the hand every day. I used to be bad with having my arm in there like literally every day, and now I'm like really good at only doing it like once or twice a week. So I think hands out less and just keeping things stable goes a long way. Hi from the Whole Foods break room. What's going on? Happy breaking at the Whole Foods. JCS. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap her up for today, but I think, you know, a couple weeks we'll do another one where we just randomly ask questions. They're kind of fun. It's fun to just wing it and go with whatever you guys want to know. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you did, hit that like button. If you're new, subscribe. If you enjoyed it, smash the like, share with a friend. Have a wonderful